Hey guys, it's Bruce. Welcome to Convocourses podcast, and I've got here with me again, gracing us with his presence, Professor Black Ops, who's a cloud expert, a cybersecurity expert, and has a channel, Professor Black Ops, on YouTube. Are you on TikTok yet?
I am not, man. I'm almost 60, man. A lot of kids keep trying to get me on there. I might try.
I understand.
I'm barely doing YouTube, man. Come on. I'm trying though, man. I'm
So
trying.
this guy right here is who I watch when I want to know what's going on from a practical level about how governance, risk management, and compliance is applied with the cloud in a real environment. So if you guys didn't know, like, go ahead and check him out. This guy's the truth. Professor Black Ops, I have some questions for you today about cloud. So I recently passed AWS CCP and the AZ900, which is really basic. Like, I'm not trying to brag. It's pretty basic.
No, it's good. You got to start somewhere. Go ahead.
You got to start somewhere. Exactly. So
somewhere.
I took your advice and I started with AWS because I was super excited about it. I want to learn more stuff. And what it taught me was the foundations of cloud and then all the services that are in AZ, the fundamentals of AZ9 of Azure, which is Microsoft's implementation of cloud, and Amazon's implementation of cloud, which is AWS. Basic stuff. So my question is, like, where do I go from here? Like, I'm a new beginner in cloud and I want to develop further. What are some of the best skills for me to like focus in on?
I would probably step up to the associate architect, and you don't need to pass the test, but to study it. So what does that mean? Those cloud like VPC, how do you set up a VPC? How do you do subnetting? Shout out to the networking people. That's the foundation of a lot of this. Where your traffic goes, how do you keep track of it? How do you log it, right? So that's kind of what I would do next. Because a lot of times, I mean, you've been in this game a lot. You're working with the CTOs and how they build their infrastructure, their architecture. Then, like you said, the part of assessment is you need to understand that so you can assess it, right? How do you look up an EC2? How do you do serverless? How do you make sure the subnets? How do you make sure it doesn't touch the internet and stay in private with private links, right? So I think that's kind of the next step of the evolution of that.
All right. So when I was going through it, one of the more complex things that I got into was the virtual private cloud.
That's the networking piece, yeah.
And I realized how important it was because a lot of, especially federal space, are implementing some instances of that. So would you say that that's one of the better ones to get deeper into?
Yeah, you have to, because that's going to be your subnetting, your traffic. You got to control your traffic, what touches what. Because we know in federal spaces, they really want you to segment that, right? So if you don't do your networking right, your scope of work will be too big. You're like, well, this database ain't in there. Where my traffic is going over there, so now it's in scope, right? So I think that part of in scoping is part of the this how you set up your networking. Because really we want to keep the scope small, right? Your attack surface small. So if you say this federal space, this VPC is specifically for that, and these are the things that can touch, right? Now, if I get in there and start running Nmap, and I can touch your whole infrastructure, then all that becomes in scope, right? So I think that's where that VPC, and we always talk about networking really is the foundation for a lot of cybersecurity, which puts that in there for GRC. So.
Right. And if you guys are just joining me, I've got Professor Black Ops on YouTube, and we're live. Somebody asked me, is this live? This is live right now. You can ask questions. Now, I've got some questions I personally want to ask Professor Black Ops. So you guys hold your questions, get your questions ready. And if you guys didn't know, we've been in this game for a long time. We are doing mostly, for me personally, the DOD, different parts of the federal government I've been working in. As a contractor doing GRC work, and also Professor Black Ops. Same thing for you, right? Like you've been doing different private and public sector.
Yeah, I'm usually working for a private firm trying to get that federal work. I'm mostly touching IRS, which is Pub 1075 that sits on top of this, but all that federal work is super similar. Especially now they want you to be in the FedRAMP cloud. So all that's the same, right? So that's one reason long story short, how I got an AWS, I was working for, and I just said the Indiana State Department of Revenue as a consultant, and all our third-party vendors were in AWS. So I'm like, dude, I don't know how to assess this stuff. I need to roll my steeds on. And two, we know the cloud, it's not the future, it's now. As an old guy, I'm almost 60. I'm like, man, it's going to be my last thing I need to ride off in the sunset. So that's really how I got into AWS, how I really start going to each service. Shout out to AWS. They tell you what each service is compliant with. Is it FedRAMP? Is it NIST? Is it CMC? Is it FISMA? Shout out to the old DOD guys. It used to be FISMA type stuff. I heard you doing a shout out to the die cap. I used to love that probably in 2008. I was doing die cap. I'm that old. the die cap. But long story short, that's how I got into AWS. Like I said, all our vendors were. And my job was to do third-party assessments on all that stuff. And dudes were talking. I'm like, I think this dude's trying to lie to me. So that's how I got into AWS. Once again, I was at the Indiana State Department of Revenue and all our third-party vendors that you should be assessing before they get into your network. So I wanted to be comfortable with those. And you know, AWS got a ton of services. So just trying to get comfortable really with the foundational services.
Yeah, and that's where I'm at right now. Like past 4 or 5 positions, cloud has been getting more and more prevalent. So I really have to and diving into the AWS CCP and AZ900 made me realize how much I've already been using.
Oh yeah,
it was a real eye opener. I'm like, some of the terms we're using, I didn't even know. Like, you know, I'm just full transparency. I'm not a cloud guy, but now I have to get deeper into it.
But the cool thing, like you realize those, like, oh, I've been doing all this stuff on prem, is just a different name. Now the cloud makes it easier to spin up and shut down. But if you've been doing a VM, that's EC2. If you're doing Linux or Windows, right, you get in the cloud, a subnet, private or public. You did SIM, so you can do CloudWatch and CloudTrail. That's their local SIM. You can push it into Splunk or OpenStash or ElkStash, right? So all that terminology and a lot of that's the same. It's just getting used to how the cloud does it and how the cloud can spin it up and shut it down. Because in the old days, if you had to get a server, man, you had a requisition and get disk space. That might take you 3 months. So now you be like, hey, man, is it approved? I can just spin it up. Then the other part of that, shout out when you get into a little more, it's called SCP, Service Control Plan. Now I can say you can only spin up this type of VM because we want to control your costs because we can govern it, right? That's when the next level is, okay, what's the governance part? Or I'm going to let you put permission on this user, but I'm going to put a permission boundary so you can't make it like rude or give it too much permissions. You can only do this stuff in dev. So I can give you enough to set up permissions, but I'm not going to let you, give you root so you can do too much, right? So what are those governing principles in AWS, right? And I think that's the third step where I'm trying to get more comfortable with.
Right. Okay, so I get a lot of questions on TikTok, on YouTube, on Facebook. People asking me questions about really trying to get into this career field, and it brings up a question that maybe we could sum it up. So my question to you is, out of all the things in your resume, all the skills, all the tools, all the certifications, what's been the most impactful to getting your foot in the door, but also being effective when you started working in the environment? Like, where should somebody focus their energy on, or what was the most impactful thing on your resume in your skill set that is the best thing in your resume?
The weird thing, it used to be the technical skills, right? I started off as a programmer and a DBA, so those used to be it. But as you get older, what really gets me in the door now that I sell people on is understand NIST 800-53 and compliance, right? When you go in the federal space, if you don't do it right, you don't get an ATO, you can get shut down, or you could get fined, right? So that's really what I sell people on, right? And my thing is, people I do big system and big things because I do federal work, right? I'm not scared of those people. And then two is me communicating with people like, well, our development staff be trying to say this and that. I'm like, I can handle those guys, right? So that's that. So why do? Because they ain't gonna BS me. But two is, like my boss said, don't put a turd on my desk and leave, right? So I got enough experience in here where if I give you a problem, I'm gonna give you some solutions, right? So then it's you as a CTO or head of programming to accept those solutions, right? I'm not gonna tell you wrong and just look at you like, okay, what we gonna do? I can say, this is what it is. I think you should set up a private link. This is the best practices for AWS. Now, does that work in your architecture? Now, you don't have to do what I present, but at least I'm not just once again putting a turn on your desk and leaving, right? And two is, once again, I'm trying to give you solutions to help you overcome that NIST federal compliance. If you get a findings, if it's a Cat 1 or a critical, you got to fix it in 30 days. So what are our options? What can we do to, overcome that? It could be short term till we, scan it past and we could do something different. But from a short term solution, that's the value add I think I bring to the table.
That was a great. I didn't even think of that one. I had a whole bunch of things in my head, and then you just brought that up. That risk management framework, knowing the framework has been the most effective thing. I mean, on my resume, but also when I get in the job, knowing how to implement it in an environment, it has been really, really important. And I don't think it's any one, like if you might be in a whole nother industry, maybe PCI DSS is the thing you need to learn. Yeah. But for me, I'm in the federal space. So NIST 800 has been the thing that I really had to know and how to implement it. Other things I would say, some tools, like for me, knowing scanning tools, because I've been getting pushed more into like a vulnerability management type position. So any kind of scanning tool, those have been probably the two most important skill sets that got me in the door, but also had me succeed once I got in there. So let me see other questions I had for you. I'm just going down the list of all the most important things that I really wanted to ask you. And then I thought I'd summed it up into all the questions that people have been asking me. And so I know I asked this one before, but what are your top 5 cloud certifications that you would recommend that somebody get as a cloud professional?
I think you hit on a lot of them. AWS, from a GRC perspective, I think both of their associate architects, right? Because it's going to tell you the best practices and best breed. Both of those for Azure and AWS, kind of those are big two. I would kind of pick up Google, but I'm not a super big on Google fan. And two is, if you're a developer, both of those has a developer. If you're more of a SysOp guy, then both of those have SysOps, and both of those have security certification. So that's probably about 6. So those are kind of the bigger ones. And two is, and this two is from a cloud perspective, but two, if you're a senior, which I need to get, is the CISP or the CISSA. Because if you're getting remote work, if you don't have that, I don't think you're getting past the ATS scanner now, because so many people are applying. So if you're at the senior level, but from the cloud, I think those are the two big ones, and I would just focus on really Azure and AWS. Okay. Google's getting better. Shout out to my man. I interviewed one of my partners, just worked for Oracle over there. Google was lacking that federal compliance. I mean, I was arguing with some guys. I'm like, oh, our security is much better. It is, but if I can't if I can't check off this FedRAMP box, it don't matter. They wasn't doing FIPS 140-3. I'm like, dude, right. I understand it's outdated. I understand it's slow, and I understand it costs too much. But if you're not doing it, I can't put our workload on your cloud. So I was arguing with these guys for like 3 or 4 months. Wow. Then I think somebody got him, because I hope I didn't get him fired. He kind of disappeared. I was like, dude, I'm not disagreeing with you, but for FedRAMP, I need to be able to collect this box. If I can't tick this box, we can't put our workload on there.
Right.
Those, they were young and they were super brilliant, but I'm like, it's cool, but if I can't check this box, I don't give a shit how smart you are. So, right. So we were going back and forth. But no, I think those are really the big two. And I think really, I think Azure is going to pass AWS probably in the next 5 years. So
Azure is going to pass AWS.
Oh, easy. Yeah. The reason why is Azure gives you Active Directory, AFDS, and everybody's doing that, and the Office 365. And I sent you the 25 things you get on your E2 license that you can do to do some GRC. All those programs you get with your E2 license, and most people have that. So they give you a lot. I don't think it's free, but they give you a lot of stuff to work with. Then the other part too, that Azure is smart. AWS is in competition with a lot of people. Like they did Prime. Netflix was paying them like $40 million a month, if I'm paying you $40 million a month, you can't spin up a service to be in competition with me. So I think they do that in a lot of their service. Same thing with Whole Foods. Right. Kroger's was spending like $20 million a month. Like, dude, I'm not paying you, and you're gonna do a grocery against me. They got that in a lot of products, man. So I think a lot of people are gonna switch for Azure, and I think too, Azure's got those foundational services. Once again, email, Office 365, and Active Directory. Now I think a lot of people are gonna be multi-cloud, but I think those two things are gonna flip it. Now, don't get me wrong, AWS is not going anywhere. I think AWS, from a development perspective, I think they got the developer's life, but that corporate enterprise stuff, Microsoft's got that in and out, though, especially once again with the email and Active Directory, and a lot of people running that on prem.
Right. I know that AWS has them beat on. Correct me if I'm wrong. On right now on availability zones, right?
They do. But Microsoft got infinite money. They catching up, right? It's just a time thing. And two is, once again, they got to be on availability, but I don't need all them zones, man. I'm trying to do. They got stuff in Brazil and Japan, and I just need a couple things in the United States, man. So, but if you're a global company now, I think. But if I'm just a base, especially if I'm a government company, I got to be in CONUS. And well, I guess the U.S. repositories is a new term. I'm not trying to go out to the United States. So, but no, you're right with that. But once again, I just think, especially from mid-level, I just think Azure, once again, with that Active Directory and Office 365, that's an easy lift and shift. And that's a lot of stuff that kind of gets you up and running.
Yeah, that's a great point about Azure. As since you mentioned that, I did AWS CCP, right? And I'm going through it, and a light bulb's going off. I'm like, it's amazing. I can see why people are going to it. But then I start realizing how much of the current infrastructure I'm on is actually on Azure. And I'm like, so I need to be doing Azure because I'm using a lot of the tools already. So then I switched to AZ900, and yeah, sure enough, I'm like, oh shit, like everything that we're currently doing is actually a lot of Azure stuff. So yeah, you're right about that one. I can't argue with that. And another great point you brought up is that Amazon is competing
a lot of stuff.
Amazon Prime competes directly with Netflix, and Netflix is using their product, so they might.
I'm paying you $40 million a month, and you gonna pick a penny? No, man, that ain't gonna happen. The same thing, Kroger. There's a lot of grocery stores on AWS, and they buy Whole Foods. They're like, nah, man, we ain't doing this.
Not only that, but delivery. Like if you're UPS and you want to use cloud, and then you're going to compete directly with Amazon's shipment company.
I did a video 2 years ago. People don't know how many businesses Amazon owns behind the scenes, man. People don't even realize
they're on a whole nother level. It's mind blowing how successful that company is.
And I'm just gonna throw this out. I do the thing is they have their own containers and they're buying ships. I think they're really about to skip shipping and set up their own shipping port in a little bit.
They're trying to go to space.
They got their own planes. They got their own planes for delivery for high value items, right? If it's Christmas, it's Elmo, I ain't got time to wait, 4 months for it to come on ships. That's a high dollar. So I'm gonna put it on one of our planes. I done bought Amazon got the fleet of delivery out there already.
Right.
So I think they're gonna do their own shipping port in a minute. So
I could see that happening. So, okay, another question, shifting it over to AI. So a lot of stuff's been happening with AI. So I think we should go a little bit into that one. So I wanted to give you guys perspective from somebody who's in the industry. I'm in the industry. PBO is in the industry. We're going to give you some real life insight into what's happening right now. Now, first of all, PBO, what is your opinion on somebody who's trying to get into the AI space? You're an IT professional. Is there a way to pivot into AI, or what's your advice with that?
Well, pivot. I think AI is in everything. If you look at AWS Guard doing a lot of fun, they got machine learning already built in there, right? Like Guard, if I'm looking through logs, I can't look through a lot of petabytes of logs, right? So I'm using machine learning with AI on top of MITRE, so I'm looking for certain attacks. from the GRC perspective, we were talking about, can we get AI and govt to update our SSPs? I was talking about, so, and two, is it smart enough to know if we feed it our documentation, could it go through and give us recommendations on what our architecture is? And the answer is yes, right? Somebody reached out to me, we were doing assessment. So we took all that vendor's documentation, put it into AI, and then we had to do an assessment on their trust center, right? So AI is there. So what's the best way to use it, right? So I don't think AI is going to take over everything, but you're going to need less people with AI. But two is there's going to be a lot more services, a lot more SaaS. So you're going to need some help helping you do that too, right? So I think that's going to be a balance of that. Currently, right now, I don't think AI is a big issue. The reason why is we're 1 million people short, so the gatekeepers are not letting people in with or without AI. So I don't think. So I think we got a bigger problem with gatekeepers stopping people from getting in, and we got people with AI. So AI is kind of helping, because if we short, AI kind of helps it a little bigger. But I think we need to kind of get over that hump, because is college a scam? Do we need colleges? What certs we have? So I think we have more of a educational, how we're going to get people in and get trained people. But AI is here, and I think you need to understand it. But once again, I think AI is going to be working in the back more. Once again, helping you go through logs. If I got a SOC, you're not going through a petabyte of logs. AI is going to help you do that. So even if you do threat hunting, you're only looking for a specific sliver or some kind of novel attack, where it's looking through your logs. We can talk about Cozy Bear, Russia, and Iran. They have a TTP attack pattern. So AI machine learning is going to look through your logs to help you see those type of attacks, right? From an AI perspective. So I don't think you had AI versus, I think AI, GRC, and cloud all comes together, right? Because we got to govern it. We got cloud, and we have AI assisting us with our cloud workloads. Once again, from a governance risk standpoint, going through there and validating how you set it up. I mean, so there's a lot of things AI is assisting. So I think all that's going to work together. You're gonna need to understand all those so you can be employed. So that's kind of how I envision it.
That's a great point. So what's happening in our environment right now is AI is being slowly integrated into all the tools we're using. And then they're trying to move towards tools that do use AI as much as possible, because like PBO said, like there's not enough people to do this work. And we kind of touched on it last week. We don't have enough people to do it. And then they have I don't know what's going on. Even before all the political stuff, we didn't have enough people to do this work, but they want to increase the volume and quality of work, but they don't want to hire the people. I don't know if they don't want to.
No, I think it's the boomers. I've been arguing with the boomers. I think they're so set on degrees. And one of my good buddies, I'm interviewing, I hired this young kid. He really wasn't feeling him at first. He's like, well, I don't know. He don't have the background. I'm like, dude, before he touch anything on here, we got to train him. We just don't let people run willy-nilly. But for his perspective, and two, shout out to him, super brilliant guy. So he likes guys that are super brilliant. I'm like, dude, if we got to get 10 of you, we ain't going to never make it, man. So I think that's kind of it. Shout out to the boomers. I think they're phasing out. So I think Gen X is probably I ain't gonna say grade down, because a lot of times degrees show a certain level of expertise. But once again, I got my degree in 1990. I was doing COBOL. Most of that shit don't even exist anymore, right? So I think, and I'll let you chime on it. That's kind of what I see. And shout out to the boomers. I think they be gatekeeping a little hard. But two, I understand if they mess up, they gonna get me fired, man. So I was like, okay, that's a good point. He's like, and shout out to my boss. He goes, I take all the smoke if anything happened. I go, that's true. So I want to pick my team. I was like, I'm not saying don't pick your team, just but do I tell them to loosen up? So I mean, that's a hard. I know where he's coming. But I'm like, I'm 58. You about 63. You about done. So. But no, that's what I see. I'll let you chime in on that, man.
I think like from the current position I'm at, the organization I'm with, it takes a really long time to hire people. So it's not AI taking jobs. What's going on right now, like you said, it's a bigger problem in that we have a hiring issue. So it's taken a really long time to hire people, like something like average of 3-4 months. I'm not exaggerating.
Facts.
And because because that's happening, because of this long background check, some people are bouncing. Like they'll hire a guy, it takes 2 months. They're like, yo, I already got another job. Sorry about that. So we're losing a lot of good potential people. So that's one thing. At the last job I was at, we couldn't get the quality of people on that one. Like that one, it was a consulting gig. So you needed people to like run meetings. Like you couldn't just be in the background doing stuff. You had to be on call with a customer and you were running it. So they couldn't find a certain level of people. It was just took a long time to find that quality of person. And then if I go all the way back to NASA, it was, what was the issue there? It was we couldn't get people through the background. It just took a long time to get them through that, get them a public trust. So it was like you would take 2-3 months to get a person in there. And by the time you were on the second month, they were like, hey, I already got another job. And you got to start the whole process over again. So it's not like you would think that, oh, it's AI is taking. No. We're not there yet. Like we're just getting tools in and we're using the tools. They're not replacing jobs. We're using the tools. And just like PBO said, I would piggyback on that and say, I need those tools because they got me with 3-4 hats on. Yeah. So I need those tools to do the job more effectively and faster. I mean, I'm putting in 56-hour weeks sometimes because there's too much work. But that tool, maybe that will help me to shorten, close that gap a little bit. So that was a great point, man. Spoken like somebody who definitely knows what the hell's going on. Okay, another question for you. This is piggybacking off of last week. I read this article about GRC, our profession, being ripe for revolution. And it was the article written by this dude named Chris Hughes. Shout out Chris Hughes. Dude is on YouTube. I think his site's called Cyber Resilience. Anyway, great point. He's had an article. He was talking about how cloud is evolving, networking is evolving, you got virtualization, you got AI, and it's all moving fast. But GRC relatively has not changed much in 20-30 years. And first I thought, the article is going to be about him shitting on compliance, which some real technical people do. So I was kind of skeptical, but I read it and I was like, this guy has a point. He's not saying we don't need to do compliance anymore like some of the technical guys say. He was saying we need to make it faster, more efficient. It needs to keep up with technology, and the people doing it need to be more smarter on the tech side. And I was like, man, I can't disagree with that. That makes he's made a lot of points there. So I wanted to get your opinion on that.
It is, and that's the good and bad thing. And like I said, I was in a discussion, and we can get into that more. Is the part of the Fed is they want to make sure it's rock solid. They want to really make sure you bank it 5 years before they start recommending stuff, right? So I think that's the nature of the Fed space, right? Which is definitely good and bad, right? So for me, the good part is we're not doing any super novel. We weren't doing no SQL. We weren't doing MongoDB for a decade when it was out because we want to make sure it's a proven technology. Because a lot of times when it spins up, people don't think about security. They think about features because that's how you make money. So, like I said, I'm a curmudgeon. I like that because it gives me time to get seasoned with it. And then by the time they really become adopted, you got checklists, scanners, Rapid7's got compliance modules on it. So there's a lot of foundational things set up for you, right? So, but being slow, right, is you can't use the newest technology. But a lot of times I don't want to use the newest technology, right? So those are bugs. But a lot of the young hot guys, whatever's hot, Rust, Java, they want to jump on. Like, no, dude, it ain't been shaken out. So that and I tell people that's the good and bad is. And for me, most things I know by then is they got the STIG check, they got the schisms that's already hard, and they got the rapid center compliance. So that gives us some foundation, right? Yes. Sometimes you don't want to be first because you get cut a lot, man. When you first mover, you get cut a lot. And we're not the govt. Now, if you Google not Google, but if you're Facebook or some of those are commercial business, so they should be out in front. So that's kind of my thought pattern on that. So I think it's good and bad, but for me, I like it to be biked. I just got around and they give you best practices. Once again, we got the scanners, compliance. We got a lot of history on it. We got a lot of working papers on it. If you get the hot new things, you don't have any of that. You trying to figure it out. Then they come up with some hack you wasn't even aware of, right? So
right. It's not a frontier issue. Like you have to, there's a certain level of assurance that we have to have, a certain level of confidence because we're dealing with very important information, very sensitive information where people are relying on it. Like these are systems where if it goes down, you're talking about people not getting paid, like a whole millions of people not getting paid, not getting their refunds, not getting if this system goes down, it's there's a real problem.
With DOD, you might logistics. The tanks might go another way, play where it should be. But go
DOD. I mean, DOD people can die. Like it's serious. So we can't just throw an AI model out there and start, because I mean you're seeing in real time in the news where people are just trying to do trying to throw models inside of government systems and then firing a bunch of people. Like you can't. There's going to be repercussions. Let me just put it that way. There'll be repercussions.
I'm going to chime in. I'm going to jump the gun. I had a very fiery conversation. Shout out to my man Ben Tech in there, study GRC. They were talking about hallucinations and LLM models. I told him, I was like, dude, I do GRC. My job is to make sure the data gets there safe. My job is to make sure the pipeline's good. A hallucination is a program problem. If the program comes up with the wrong financial information, GRC doesn't chime in on that. So we were debating, should GRC talk about hallucinations? I'm like, that's a programming problem, right? So we were talking about really the segmentation of jobs from AI. Where does GRC stop, and where does for me, an AI model expert start? That's not a GRC problem. So we were debating that. I'm like, dude, I'm not jumping into that. I don't do hallucinations. So where's the separations of duties there? So that's my next video, is how do you secure the pipeline? How do you secure the machine learning? But to me, once that data gets into the model and start training, that's not a GRC issue.
Right. Absolutely. So, and for those of you guys joining me late, I'm talking with Professor Black Ops, a subject matter expert on AWS, on cloud, on GRC. Very, very special episode where we're talking to somebody who's in the field doing the work, getting his take on AI, his take on cloud, his take on GRC. So this is a great opportunity for you to ask questions, especially if you're trying to get into this field or you're in this field, you want to learn more. Great opportunity. So my last question to you, and I'm going to open it up to everybody, to Professor Black Ops. Do you have any plans to do any teaching? Man, I love your material. I want to go deeper with it. I would be a paying customer. So do you have any plan to release a book, a course, a program, mentorship, anything?
Well, that not your fault. I'm 90% done with a course. It's supposed to be in GRC Academy. Shout out to Dr. Ozier. I need to finish that. I've been kind of burnt out. So I'm doing actually in this 800-53. And I was going to do it a little different. Once a week, I was going to do a hybrid where I do labbing that relates to that course. At the end is the capstone is you're going to do a FISMA assessment to kind of walk through the policies and procedure. The cool thing is we're going to generate a lot of those off of ChatGPT, then have you fill them in from how your business actually works and how would that look like. All right. Then the one part I put out there, I think I bit off a little more than I chew, is filling out an SSP for a small company. I was like, oh my God, I start doing that. I'm like, oh, that's a little bigger. But yeah, I'm working on a small course once again at simply GRC Academy with Dr. Ozier. So I'm trying to get that finished.
Awesome. That's awesome. Looking forward to
low cost too, nothing too crazy out there. Low cost.
All right. I'm ready to give you money, man. So I want to see it. So please. Okay, let me take some questions here. I'm not going to keep you guys too long. I got some other stuff to do in the real world here, but let me see here. We got Larry. Hey, shout out Larry. How you doing, man? Thank you so much for setting this up. Farron Perry says, I was reading ISO 4201 AI standards. I got to check that one out. I haven't read through that.
Yeah, I've been actually going through it. I think I was going to do a video with that. And NIST 200 AI just came out with their additional framework. I did a video on 100, 200 just came out. So I was actually going to meld those two together. So
Oh, that's a great idea. That's a great idea. I definitely want to take a shot at that NIST CSF, the NIST AI
Mm-hmm.
100 and 200. Let me see. I got one from TikTok. They said, will my resume be looked at differently once I have my cybersecurity technology degree in August? I would say Vincent and anybody else who has similar questions about, like, you're new to this field, you're trying to get in. This is just my take. Um, I'm not saying don't get a degree. I'm not saying don't get certifications, but focus on experience, focus on what you do, focus on your projects, put that stuff on there.
Mm-hmm.
Those are going to sometimes be is going to separate the men from the boys, so to speak. So get your experience, like focus on experience. If you're still in school, try to get into student programs where you're doing IT. I'm just talking basic IT jobs. If you have a student program, get in there. You have projects you can do where you're setting up firewalls or something like that. That's stuff you can put on your resume where you had hands-on skills in certain technologies and certain skills. So that's the kind of stuff you want to focus on right now. PBO, what would you say about that?
No, I think you're 100%. Go ahead, finish it, but you need to create a portfolio with that now. I think to kind of, like you said, separate you, because a lot of people are looking for hand-on experience. And I think you touched on the bad thing is there's a lot of experienced people getting laid off. So this job market is going to be crazy, I think, till 2026. So you're going to need some real-world experience, because there's a lot of good people in federal space that got cut. So they about to saturate the job market. I think salary is going to get pushed down, but yeah, it's going to be crazy, man. Two is Google laid off 5,000. I think AWS laid off a couple thousand. So I think shout out to my man Elon Musk. I think he did this trend where everybody's cost cutting, and somebody made 25 billion and still laid out people. So in a quarter, I forgot who that was, but yeah, if you look out this job market is going to be crazy, man.
That's a great point.
Till 2026. But once again, don't fret. I'll stay in it, keep grinding. You just gotta know what you need to sign up for, man. And if this what it is right now, it's just a bad time, man. So if you're in school, and I don't know how old you are, but if you can hang in there, if you're on campus, I might, stay on there for a little bit for a while. Because like I said, I'll let you chime in on that. I just think this is just a bad economy. I came out in a recession, so I definitely know what's that's like. And but once again, I would keep grinding. And I thought Bruce said I had work study to help me get real world experience. So figure out how to get that so you can get in the door. Two thing, I don't know if you're a little younger, a lot of times you can take a little less money. I don't know your situation. If you can stay home with your parents, stay there. Room up. Once again, like I said, it's just a bad job market, though.
Yeah, I would agree with Professor Black Ops on that. Like, what's happening right now is there's a lot of changes happening all at once. I think that's what's happening, is that you have an economic change on a national level, global level. You have people following the trend of, like you said, Elon Musk start firing people. And then now a lot of other tech billionaires are doing kind of the same thing. Mm-hmm. Plus you have them doing this whole restructuring of the federal government, or trying to anyway. So you got like 3 or 4 different things all happening at once. And so the market is unstable right now. Just think about it. You're a small, medium-sized business owner, and you've got to hire, you've got all this in and out constantly going, right? You don't know how you're going to eat, because you don't know if you can get your next contract. Maybe you had a contract with USAID or something like that, and now they're talking about getting rid of it. They got rid of it, but now you've got all these people on a contract. Now you got to think about, okay, are we going to hit our revenues for the next year? Like, what's going on? You're probably going to hold back a little bit on hiring. You're going to pull back until things get more stable. So there's so much uncertainty that companies, organizations are like holding back and saying, okay, let's see what's going on. Even with the stock market, I mean, think about it. All these tariffs coming in and off. Let's increase it to this. Now it's going to be lower. Like, people are like, okay, what are we doing here? So the uncertainty is making an uncertain job market. And so I have seen a lower amount of opportunities coming my way. I'm still getting them, but it's less than it was, I would say, a year ago. I guess it's less than it was a few months ago even. So you know, that's kind of what's happening. Are there jobs? There's still jobs. It's just there's less and they're more competitive. There's more. Yeah, you're gonna have to really compete and go even harder than before with finding jobs. And I see a lot of Gen Z out there who just got their degree. There's this trend on TikTok where people are saying, "Oh, I got a Harvard degree and I can't find a job. I applied for 1,000 jobs. I did 10 interviews, you know, and they still can't get a job." And I'm like, damn,
that's great.
And what can I say? You know what I mean? Like it's way harder than it was a few months ago, a few years ago. So hang in there, go harder. There are jobs that are just way more competitive than they were before.
Yeah, real quick, let me try. I need to get on the back end of that. Especially if you just starting or got a few hours, try to go in the office. Because if you go in the office, you're going to cut out 95% of your competition. If you're trying to get in a remote game like me and him and this, man, we got 20 years. So that remote work, that's a rough game. And two is, and he knows this is, most government contracts are 5 years, but they're renewable every year, so they can cut it anytime they want. So that's the thing. Because what I got tricked, I got lucky. Not so cool consulting company said we got a 5-year contract. Oh, that's cool. I got there. It's like, yeah, it ends in 6 months. I'm like, so I was like, oh, I forgot. I need to put that in the question back. So, but I got lucky. They renewed it, and the contract got renewed. But I always remember, number one is those contracts are renewable every year. But two is I would ask them when is the end date of the contract. Once again, PBO was young and got tricked. I wasn't very happy. I must punch him in the throat. No, go ahead, Convocourses.
Yeah. So great point. Remote jobs are very, very competitive. They were very competitive even before all this uncertainty, but now, hell, the government's shutting those down. Like they're saying, nope, we don't want any. So coming in the office might be like, if you're willing to travel or relocate or something, anything like that is going to help you to being in office, is going to help you to get that job faster. So remote jobs, I mean, if there was a gold mine like during a little bit before COVID, during COVID, and a little bit after, it was like a gold rush for these jobs because everybody started doing more remote jobs. And now, I mean, I'm not sure like what they're seeing in the numbers, but I'm way more productive at home. Like I can spend an extra hour on your project than driving, you know, to work. So for me personally, but yeah, they're remote jobs are way harder to find now. Let me see what other questions we have going on. Security expert said, yep, I agree that a thorough understanding of 853 risk management framework are baseline requirements for the federal space. Well, that's right.
Hold on real quick. I just disagree a little bit. I think it's a requirement, but most of the times your programmers are going to program, your cloud dudes going to cloud. They need GRC to help them with that. I think, and I agree, I just don't see those teams understanding that and those requirements for those jobs. And they just never seem like they care until I give them their findings. but I don't know. I agree it should be, but me, that's how I make my living. Those guys, especially when you come out of college, they don't talk about that stuff very much in college. When I taught at the community college, I brought it up a lot, and a lot of people were kind of happy I did, but that's nowhere in the curriculum. I don't know if it's an advanced thing or people think the federal space is small. I just don't see any of those compliances really pushed very. The only one I see pushed, because I did some guest lecturing inside the nursing. People talk about HIPAA in their that space from a hospital standpoint, because they're trying to get in the hospital domain. But I don't see the federal space in IT getting pushed at all. That's one reason I wanted to do that 853 course, because I just didn't see. I've seen some RMF courses. I think I've only seen one other 853 course out there.
Yeah, I have to agree with it. That's why I started off with teaching DITSCAP, actually.
Facts.
Yeah. DITSCAP.
Yeah. I love this.
Nobody was talking about it. So like this was way back when I first did it, got out of the military, and I started talking about it. I was trying to research more information. There was nothing. There was nothing at the time. And so I started a blog, and then people responded to it, and then it switched to DICAP. I started doing that online, and then, you know, I just kind of kept up with the different standards, and I started doing it because nobody else was talking about it.
No.
So yeah, they don't really teach it in school, which is crazy to me.
I don't see a lot of people talk about besides you. I don't see a lot of people talk about 853, but me. That's kind of my main thing. I like the big hammer, so you don't see a lot of people talking about that.
No, great point. I agree that you can't go wrong with yeah, you can't go wrong if you learn NIST 800 as a baseline. That is awesome. Thank you for that, Larry. Appreciate you. More comments. PBO.
Fast.
Somebody said, security expert said, PBO, we had the exact same problem with Google Cloud a few years ago. It had a great set of services, but they couldn't meet the FedRAMP security requirements.
They couldn't. And I'm arguing with them, man. These young brilliant guys from Harvard, I'm like, PBO is like, can't check the box on me. I don't care. I don't care where you're from. But they're getting a lot better. Shout out to them. One of my very good homies went over there from Oracle. He had that background because they figured out they were losing a lot of business on it. But yeah, I was right there with security expert. I mean, I was going toe to toe with those guys. I guess they were used to people. Yeah. For me, I didn't want to use Google. So one of our divisions were talking about using Google. So I was like, nah, I'm about to squash this. I got enough work on my plate. I'm about to squash this. So, but I think they're getting there. Shout out to my man Before the Billions. I think he's doing a little work with Google, but their federals, to me, is still weak. I don't really put them in the pack with them, but shout out to it was a $9 billion RFP for cloud vendors. They won it. It was AWS, Azure, Google, and Oracle that won that cloud, meaning they could bid on that type of work and they were certified to do that type of work. So,
okay, we got another question from Larry. Larry says, with the corporate takeover of federal government IT spaces, can we expect Azure to have a stronger impression across the government agency portfolios? I personally see the growth in my agency. I'm gonna let you talk on that one.
Yeah, and I think what we talked about, and that's what I see a lot when talking to DoD, is everybody's doing Active Directory in the Fed. I mean, everybody was running Windows. We had Linux, but the base, when you talk about SharePoint, all of that was Microsoft. So that's an easy lift and shift to Azure. And shout out to Azure. They got all the federal compliances. They got all the check boxes. So that's why I think Azure is going to end up passing AWS in the future. And once again, I think most of those are going to be multi-cloud in the future. I think Oracle's going to get a piece of that because they lived in that business for 20 years. And I think IBM, because they're actually focusing on multi-cloud because they know people are going to get there. But yeah, Azure is already there. Once again, I think people are kind of tired of competing with AWS. Shout out to AWS, though. They be dropping prices, man. They be coming up with some new services and new setups. And to me, AWS consulting arm is so good. So anything you want to done, they already done. They done it at a bigger client, and they working with global clients too. So they do some novel approaches I think can help because the Fed government is big, you know. So I think they're in that space. But once again, I think Active Directory, Office 365 is an easy lift and shift, and I think obviously that's their way in. And they're like, oh, we got this. We got some VMs for you. Shout out to Nardelli. Him and Gates almost got in a fist fight with Ballmer. He was pushing Linux. Ballmer and Bill Gates hated that, but he was like, "You put me in charge." He's from India. Them dudes was rolling with Linux, so shout out to him. Their Linux is strong on Azure. They got a nice Linux pack, and Ballmer was mad because he was actually pushing that more than Windows because he was smart enough to know my corporate client's gonna come with Windows. I need to get the developers, so he was really pushing Linux and Azure.
Right. And to speak to this one, Larry, like in the environment I'm in right now, I would say, man, 95% of what we use is actually Azure. 95% in the federal space. And then looking back to the last couple of federal spaces I was in, it was also mostly Azure. And it's because is because of Active Directory. Active Directory and their suite, their Office suite is nice. It's nice.
With Teams too, they dominate that team. So all that's connected, man. You can't
Teams
have a meeting without Teams.
Yeah. Teams it's good. It's good.
And I sent you the list of the 25 products you get. So once again, I'm using those to kind of do no code and do a GRC kind of no code thing, because I think we need to upscale out of spreadsheets. But yeah, and two is that's my next level of labbing is using Active Directory connectors inside AWS, connected actually through AWS to get your tickets out of AFDS from the cloud, right? So when you log that, authenticates, you get your tickets, then you go right into AWS, use their single sign-on, and use your permissions from Active Directory, because you don't want to duplicate that technology, right? So I think a lot of bigger companies are doing that. So what does that look like in real life, right? Because you want to use Active Directory, and it's for authenticating people and give you authorization. So once I get those tickets and, I can do conditional access, I can use that to authenticate in AWS and keep going. So I think that's the future of the multi-cloud. And from a GRC perspective, how do you make sure it's doing what it's supposed to do and secure, right? How do you govern using that, right? But once again, we've been talking multi-cloud, and I think that's how those two are going to come together.
When you have two cloud services that are if you're using them on the same network, is that a federation? Like when you're is that okay? All right.
That's what I mean with the tickets. When you log in the Active Directory, it's going to give you those tickets. Then you get federation, meaning you get access to your AWS, right? Multi-cloud. So what would that look like in real life?
Got you.
Because everybody's running Active Directory, so I don't want to make them log in again. I need to make those work seamlessly together. Because I don't want you to say set up your same groups, then you got to reset it up in AWS. You not want to do that, right? But two is, shout out AWS, give you connectors and a ton of ways to do that. That's built in. You just got to set those up. Like you said, you use the proper term. How do you get that to federate, right? And get those accesses into groups, and how do you sync them up and bring them over? Are you going to do it one way where you do Active Directory and it syncs to AWS? So you're going to change some AWS and it'll sync over, right? So those are some way, and that's what we talk about: big systems, complicated, and how do you architect that for your organization? FedRAMP, government, priv, commercial, or small company. How do you make that work and be seamless?
Okay, got another question. Larry, thanks for that $50, man. I appreciate that. He says, with cyber jobs market, U.S. as well as overseas contractor based becoming more competitive with all the changes across industry, how would each of you suggest professionals best market themselves to stand out in today's cyber workforce? This is a really, really good question.
You want me to go first? I'll go first.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
So I'm older than Convo. I'm going first. I think shout out to Convo. I think trying to figure out how to put yourself as a SME. Both of us has YouTube channel. I get like Convo. I get job offers or interviews off of my YouTube channel, right? So that conveys people my level of expertise, right? Shout out to Convo. I don't know if I'm a cloud expert, right? But from a GRC perspective, I think I'm up there, right? Now, I'm not calling myself a big architect. Once again, I understand it, so I can do an assessment and do governance and risk on it. Two is, and I think Convo brought it up, is what's your specialty? Once again, I do NIST 800-53, and I do big systems, but what is your specialty in calling card? What's going to differentiate you between other applicants, right? I do 800-53. I've been a programmer. I can talk to your developers, and I understand architecting in the cloud, right? That's my selling point. But don't get it twisted. I get a lot of ageism. PBO old and PBO making good money, and PBO ain't working 12 hours no more. He's too old, right? So you got to understand your strengths and your weaknesses, though. But what's your selling point? Like I always tell people when they say, well, I got a 2-minute speech, right? What's your 2-minute speech, and what are you selling, right? Even as a young guy, you need to, but you can add more to it. But once again, what's going to differentiate you, right? It might not be your skills. It might be your communication skills with the tech guy, right? Or you could be, I don't like people, but my tech skills are off the map. But what is your selling point to get people to hire you, Larry? Now, Larry, you got it and you got skills. But once again, in this market, when I was applying remote jobs, it'd be like 300 people qualify. And I wouldn't say I was getting discouraged because I know the game. Oh, you made it in the top 100. You were the last 3. We went with somebody else. Back then, I still was unemployed, right? But once again, what's your selling point? What are you, as a kid state, what do you stand in business on, right? I'm an 853 guy, I do big systems, and I understand AWS. Go ahead, Combo. I'm gonna throw it to you, man.
Yeah. So, man, to piggyback on what PBL said, thinking about my own skill set, I'm coming from a real world place for you. If I got fired right now, the things that would get me a job within 30 days, a good job, would be the CISSP, my skill set with NIST 800, and vulnerability management. So those main things, like PBL just said, you focus on what you dominate with. With you, Larry, I'm telling you, you as a project manager, having your years of experience and your background in the military is a huge selling point. I'm not telling you don't pursue make sure this thing's on. This is important. I'm not telling you don't pursue IT. You should. Cybersecurity, GRC, yeah, absolutely. Because the more you understand the process, the more you understand the technology, when you get in the room with guys like myself and other IT professionals, guys who are doing network engineering or something, you'll know what they're saying, so they can't BS you, right? So you'll be able to hit the ground running. And if you get a job, your highest paying position, your most dominant position would be your background in project management. That's what I would lead with. So lead with your strongest point. That's what PBO is getting at. His strongest point is cloud, DevOps. That's something I can't even speak to. DevOps piece, I can't even speak to. Like he's dominant in that and his years of experience. So lead with that. Like those are, I can't point to any one thing, right? I can't even say like, okay, this one thing that you do is going to be, there's no one button that's going to solve all problems. But the thing that's most dominant in your background, lead with that. Don't scrub that from your resume. Lead with that. If you're a young dude and you don't have this kind of experience like we're talking about here, you don't have Larry's background in project management, you don't have PBO's background in DevOps, in his 20 plus years of experience in IT. You don't have that. You have your youth. You could work extra hours. You could, if you're in school right now, you could be a working student. You could go internships. You can go apprenticeships. There's certain things you can do that you could lead with that locally. I would go for local jobs that are in the office that you could try to get your foot in the door, because right now that's the main thing you want to do is get your foot in the door. So thanks for that question, Larry. I really appreciate that. I got some other
Let me get on the end of that, and I don't like those guys, but Combo will tell you this: any big government company, we got a PMO office, right? So I always give my action items to the program manager because they run it, because that's how they get to see the risk from the whole org. So usually, and he already knows this, if you work for a big or medium-sized government agency, 9 times in them, they got project managers galore in PMO office, right? I used to get mad. I'm like, we got more PMO people than we got security people. But I think it's needed too, because usually they got a lot of projects and they want to see it from organizational, right? A lot of times I get my stovepipe. If it ain't security and GRC, I don't care, right? So I like Combo. So I think that's a big deal, especially in the government space. And once again, I work for a large state agency. They all have PMO offices.
Yep. Okay, I got some more comments and questions and stuff. I'm just gonna kind of go down the list, and I can't stay too much longer, guys, but I will answer as many questions as possible. Farron Perry says, I thought when the runtime of the model starts, it was the responsibility of the organization or GRC. I guess the pipeline together. That's our job, correct?
I did well. I kind of disagree. For me, is GRC doesn't set up the pipeline, right? The data engineer is going to set up the pipeline. I need to make sure it's secure and it's compliant, so I give it a check. But we don't set any of that up from a GRC perspective, right? So, and I think that's the discussion. What is the segmentation of jobs? Once again, if the model gives out a bad response, that's like a developer. I don't think GRC is going to chime in that. I don't have the AI, the machine learning skills to chime in on that. So for me, that was kind of my discussion. Once again, we were just talking about if the model was hallucinating. I'm like, I'm not getting into that. If it's a medical model and it's hallucinating, if I do something wrong, I could kill somebody. Yeah, but PBO's old and curmudgeon. So my thing, I think from a GRC perspective, we make sure the pipeline is compliant. We don't build the pipeline. That's the data engineer's job, right? Data analytics and analytics, they're going to make sure the analytics and the output is correct. And the model was done by the AI programmers and the AI prompt engineers. I don't think GRC should step their foot in there. But I'll let you chime in on that. That's kind of my 2 cents on that.
It's going to help us as a tool. It will be helpful. Off the top of my head, it's going to be really helpful with risk. Like if you have a seam, it's going to be way better than a human on seams, collecting all that data, sorting through it, finding patterns. It's going to be a huge help in that department because we can't go through all the data.
Fine. But
it's going to be way better at that.
But if the MITRE, like then I do an AWS guard duty, if it's not reading the tax right from MITRE, I'm not jumping into that. They got to reprogram the model to pick up the MITRE components correct. I don't think GRC would jump in that.
Yeah, I don't believe we're gonna, unless you're doing GRC for the model itself. Like if you're on the tool and you're a part of the team, like we had this, without giving away too much. So there's a tool out there that's AI based, and it's a GRC tool, like it's used for GRC. And so those guys have GRC people who help on that tool. Like if you're part of the development team and a GRC person helping with that, then you have a say so in the model itself. But as a GRC person right now, in the current job I'm doing, where it's helping, where we're trying to integrate it, is like tools for doing the risk management, tools for doing some of the automation of documentation. If there's hallucinations or problems with it, then that's not like I got to use another tool. Like I'm not going to go ahead and fix it. I'm not going to be under the hood fixing it. You're right. Unless I'm part of the tool, part of the team that's developing the tool.
What I would do is, what we mostly do is we put a ticket and say the tool broke. This don't look right. We need you to fix the tool, or exactly tell us, do we got a parameter not set up correctly, right? So, but fair enough, I think that's a discussion, right? Once again, my job is, and we had a huge discussion with my homies on Study GRC. I get to make sure the data gets to the AI. It's the AI jobs to take the data and train with it. So once again, I got keys. I'm putting it on S3. I'm making sure it's encrypted. I'm making sure there's no man in the middle attack, right? I'm making sure the like we talked about, Active Directory setup, who's supposed to see what. I'm making sure least privileges. But once that data gets into the model, I'm not touching it. But once again, I think that's a discussion for a lot of the younger guys wanting to put their toe into that. But so that's my thoughts on it.
Okay, we got another question here. Wayne says, what is a good resource to practice hands-on experience with firewall configs and deployment, SOC lab setups, cloud AD, and management? So there's a few different.
There's a lot there
to address. Yeah, there. Okay, go ahead.
Well, I would reach out. There's a lot of too many people. There's a lot of cohorts going on. People with academies and stuff. I think you need to find. I start because I'm an AWS guy. AWS has a lot of free labs you can sign up for in their training. I think if you pick out one of their certs, they can help you do that. You've got 3 different totally jobs on there. Firewall is a lot different in SOC, and that's a lot different in Cloud Active Directory and management. Once again, we've been talking about Active Directory. Azure's got their part of that. So there's like 3 different jobs. So I would find somebody you're comfortable with. I don't want to get anybody specifically shout out, but I think kind of Azure's got a lot of free labs and AWS got a lot of free labs. to get your feet wet. I would look at the big from a SOC perspective, but it costs $1 billion to Splunk. I don't think Splunk does anything for free. So I would just kind of figure out what's the 800-pound gorilla in each one of those and just go find it.
Okay, so you've got a few things here. So firewall config. So what I did when I was trying to learn firewall was I went on, I don't know if this is still valid, but this is what I did. So I went on, I think eBay or Craigslist, and I got somebody's old firewall, Palo Alto firewall. And then I start messing around with that. That's one thing you can do. I'm not sure if you can still do that, but you could probably find a pretty cheap equipment, hardware. If you want to get your hands on the hardware, you can get it for cheap. If you could also do some configs if you want to mess around with the back end of firewall configs. There's some emulators that you could use.
Tracer packet. That's what I was thinking. Shout out to Network, bro. I'm being a lot of people's YouTube. Yeah. He does Network. What I used to do for him, whatever subject he was picking, I was sending the STIG the other day. But Tracer packet, you can do a lot of that stuff virtually. And from AWS stuff, they got a virtual firewall to control traffic. So I actually do a lot of my labbing for their firewall with their AWS firewall.
And then AD, Active Directory, like PBL said, you could use Azure. I believe they have a free thing you can do for like 1 year, just like AWS. You can use for 1 year, and you can mess around with Active Directory. I'm not sure if that part is free to mess around with that, but check on that one. And then SOC lab setup. There's a few different things you can do. Splunk there's a free version of Splunk you can load locally. There's a free version of it. So that's
real quick. AWS has a Cloud Trail and Cloud Watch. Once again, you can do that for a year. Then if you set up your EC2, you click a button, VPC logs, all that stuff will flow down to their SIEMs. Then you can load them up into the free Splunk and cut on their SOC and put it on top of MITRE. I think that's the differentiating. Because when you talk about those MITRE attacks, that's Russia, Cozy Bear. And I think that's the advanced feature for all that SOC type stuff.
Yeah, and another thing, what I used to do for fun, just messing around, is I would use this is not free. I would use VMware, and VMware has a VMware workstation where you can download different instances of operating systems, and then I don't know, you can run your own lab, do all kinds of stuff with that. So those are a few different things that you could do. But you named like 3 different things, so each one of those is pretty deep. I would choose one.
Yeah, I was pretty excited.
You're biting off way more than you could chew right there. That's a lot.
I don't do a lot of SOC work, and I don't do a lot of firewall work. From a federal space, and both, that shout out to Larry, they got big teams to handle that by themselves. Yes. My job is I want to make sure I can assess it and comply, but I'm not, Cisco used to be the big thing. I think Palo Alto's taken over a little more though, but I have checks, I have assessments of how to do it, but that's a deep knowledge base. Firewalls on but that's like 4th on my list. Yeah, that's it. Like you said, those are 3 big, deep things to,
There's whole teams that do all 3 things.
Big teams.
Yes, big teams. There's there's a whole firewall team, and that team is broken off into different. You might have a hardware firewall guy, and then a software firewall guy that sets up people's accounts, and then you are in rule sets and stuff. And then when you talk about SOC, that's a whole team of people doing SOC, and then the AD. Like those are 3 different teams.
Yeah, I would pick one of those, and yes. I would pick one to be a SME and get good at. Then the other ones will come in and you can add on. Because as a SOC, after a while, you're going to be getting log alerts from the network, and you're going to be getting logs from the Azure. All those going to be sending logs to the SOC. So a lot of that crossover. Right. So yeah, I would pick one of those, Wayne. Those are big domains. Huge
domains. Okay, I got Rookie kind of chimed in on what we were saying about jobs. Lots of organizations have put a freeze on hiring. Yes, that's right. There's fewer jobs. Freeze on hiring is an understatement. Like the instability of what's going on, they're kind of holding back. It's not that there's a less work, but
it's more work.
They can't. I think that it's based off of what's going on with the economy and everything. There's several things going on all at once. Let me see. Carlana went all in on AI, then had to rehire humans. I'm not sure what you mean by that. Aurora selling driving company did almost the same thing. I actually think that AI, parts of AI trends is all hype. Is not all hype.
Yeah, man, you gotta work on
Is
that
all hype,
sense.
not all. I'm trying to interpret what you're saying here, but I think that some companies are jumping with both feet in, saying they're going to fire a bunch of people and replace everybody with AI. That's crazy. It's way too early for that. Being in the field, it's way too early. I know the Salesforce guy, the CEO, he said that like last year, and he ate those words because they couldn't do that. I mean, it's not there yet. Maybe one day, but right now it's sci-fi talk.
Yeah, but this term, this is an old term. That's vaporware. That's how you get your stock price up. You say it's gonna be great before it's great, right?
Maybe that's what he's doing.
So I think it's vaporware. I think that's what people, we put AI in refrigerators now, man. I think that's the selling point. But I agree with Convo. I think it's early, but it's always been that early. But that's how you sell and drive up your stock price. You talk about AI this and AI that, and we're gonna lay off, we're gonna streamline, we're more efficient. So for me, that's the normal, and I got an MBA. That's the normal vaporware marketing sales to get get more customers, because a lot of your CISOs, those guys aren't technically savvy. So a lot of those guys bite onto that and thinking, and the CEO wants to lay people off, so they're gonna say everything has AI. So for me, that's the normal arc of a product, right? It's vaporware. Then the next 3 or 4 years, I get it a little solid. And next 2 years, I really get it working. But that's the normal vaporware, because like we said, security doesn't sell products. Feature does, and the feature selling product this 5 years it's got to be AI machine learning. Then everybody wants to buy it. So for me, that's the normal arc of selling.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to look for other comments here. Let me see. Let me just take a minute here, take a look at TikTok. I've been ignoring people, so people jumping off the stream on this one.
Come back.
It's like with TikTok, you have to give them 100% of your attention, otherwise people bail.
You need to get that AI over there to be answering the questions for you.
Something. Let me see here. I'm reading through questions. Somebody said, does the degree matter for federal jobs?
Yes, way more for me. Go ahead. I think for me, because the boomers dominate over there, I think they're really looking for degrees. And I think that's part of the gatekeeping. But go ahead and chime in on that. I think that's part of the gatekeeping. So.
Unfortunately, they were trying to. There's been a big shift, so I don't really know what's going on right now. During the last administration, they had this huge push to hire more people without degrees, and I don't know what happened with that. But it's still relevant, so it's still going to make you extremely competitive. I know there's a lot of push. There's this huge push of people saying don't get a degree and it's useless and it's a waste of money. But I disagree. Like, I think that especially in this field, it's going to make you way more competitive if you have the time, money, and energy to do it. Like, it's not for everyone. Don't get me wrong. And you can get in without it. Maybe not the federal space, but there's other, unless you have a lot of experience, but you can get a job, an IT job, without a degree. It's just going to be less. You're going to be less competitive. It's going to be harder to do. You're going to have to come in with experience, things like that. There's a way to do it, but a degree definitely still matters for the federal jobs. They still look at it. It's a part of a lot of contracts too. They say, look, you can't hire a person without X, Y, and Z degree or X amount of experience.
And they tell you they want so many certifications and so many degrees by the people they bring on staff. So I think that's an outdated mode. But once again, like the FIPS, if they ask it for it, we got to check the box. I just think, I think we're treating degrees like it's a certification or a boot camp, right? I think degree signifies something else. I think we're kind of trying to push it like it's a certification. And I agree, some of the degrees, the ROIs don't make any sense. You come out with $100,000 worth of debt and you're making $20 an hour. That don't line up either, right? So
yeah.
But two is, I think it's better to have and not to need it than need it and not have it type thing. So PBL got 2 big degrees. So once again, I think the boomers are dominating. Now the boomers I know still respect degrees very highly now.
And those are the guys a lot of times who are hiring. So
all the guys hiring,
yeah,
especially the federal space. All
that
those guys
degree definitely matters.
yeah.
Experience, I would say, and where I'm at right now, if we could get somebody who's experienced, then they don't give a damn about a degree. Like if you have experience where I'm at,
yeah,
they don't care. They
but
don't care.
The problem with that, and you're 100% correct, is there's so many people unemployed. A lot of those people are going to have degrees
Because they're going to be up against people who got laid off from somewhere else.
And all those people like me are old, so we were there where degrees make sense. So they tell you they don't need degrees, but everybody you go, especially you go on a senior level, and you talking about 300 people applying, at least 10% of those people gonna have degrees. I would say 40%. So
that might be what's happening is because so many people got laid off, but because there's so much uncertainty, there's a hiring freeze. Maybe what's happening is boomers and Gen X are still working. Like, so there's making less opportunity for millennials and Gen Z. Maybe that's what's happening, is that the market has gotten more competitive.
It has. Let me chime in while you're thinking. The reason it is boomers were the last people with pensions. So if you're a late boomer, you in 401k. If your 401k is not up to snuff, you can't retire. Most people I know 401k got laid off. They had to use their 401k to survive. Most Gen Xers don't have 401ks. So they're the first generation with no pension. So we work until we die. Now, PBO got a little something, he's a little best. But most people, they toast. They toast. Chime in on that. Most Xers, they were living on that because they got laid off. And
that might be it. Now I'm thinking about it. Like, it's kind of like maybe like a tiny collapse.
No, it's a large collapse. Go on YouTube. It's a lot of people over there like, they were like, I'm 55. I've been laid off. I done spent my 401k. I have no money. And they're not even in good jobs even. I'm like, you toasted. You toast. You are toast. Look, go out there. It's a ton. You toast. Because we're the first generation, because we didn't know how to invest without the pension. So it's going to be a ton of late boomers and Xers. They're done. Not they're done, but they're going to be welcome to the movie. So it's going to be crazy. But that, once again, that's PBO being a curmudgeon. But I think it's about to be real ugly.
I think we're in the middle of a change, like a huge shift. And we got to think about how to get money differently. So it would behoove you to find some kind of hustle, some kind of side hustle, some method of getting more income,
But you're right. But the Xers were late to that game. I'm old. I just figured out you can really make money on YouTube. I'm not, but there's some guys out there making 10 bands a month. If you told me 20 years ago YouTubers were making real money, I would have laughed at you, man. That's a whole different ball game and a whole different skill set. Most people scared to talk to people. Most people, I say, start a YouTube channel, they start freaking out.
Yes. And I can say, like PBO said, like, I've gotten opportunities off of doing this. I've gotten people directly contacting me to do work. And if you have it in you to do it, like, you should definitely try to figure some way to make other streams of income. So
I'm gonna be a lot more harsh than Convocourses. If you're under 30, your ass need to start a YouTube channel. It's not if I want to. That's a must. Why? Because you're competing against hundreds of people. You need a way to separate yourself. People look at your YouTube channel. I got people pinging me, hey, this job is open. So, I mean, to me, if you're under 30, you got to do it. You got to get in there, man. To me, that's just part of your regular portfolio. Even if you're new, I tell people, I learn a lot from young people because I'm not going to talk about Convocourses. PBO's old and curmudgeon. I got a lot of bad habits. I like to see how young people do stuff. I'm like, well, I might not have done it like that, right? So I think young people have add value to this game. They're like, well, I'm new. I'm not 100% right on anything. PBO likes to see new things. So I think you can add value to your journey and to yourself by doing a YouTube blog, even TikTok. I'm not a TikTok guy, but I think you should do something to market yourself to employers in a different way.
Absolutely. Okay, I got a couple other questions here. Not much going on TikTok. Somebody says, sorry, is getting a degree in computer science better than to get into IT? Yes. Yeah. I would say if you have a computer science degree, you don't have to have a computer science degree. Okay. Some people get it mixed up. If you have a computer degree, period, it's going to help you. Like you can have, from what I've seen, you can have a computer, information technology, information systems degree. It doesn't have to be from Ivy League college, as long as it's an accredited college. Yeah, any one of those. And I've also, some of my coworkers don't even have a computer degree. They have a STEM degree, but they have experience doing IT work, and that helps too. So it does help. It makes you way more competitive.
And I think that was the thing with the degree, especially in my earlier Fed days, is I work with a lot of biologists, but they were doing, analytics and biology. So they knew all that type of IT work easily transferred over. I tell you really what surprised me was all the engineers that got computer science doing computer work because it paid more than engineering. I work with a ton of electrical engineers because they said, that's back then IT paid better than engineering. So I seen a lot of those got crossover, which I was surprised because electrical engineering, I got comp sci. Electrical engineering is a lot harder than computer science.
Hella hard.
Yeah. So one of my friends, they had a nuclear engineering degree. I'm like, but once again, IT page is better, right? So
yeah, actually, now that you mention that, my one of my jobs, I was working with a double E, electrical engineer. And I was like, what are you doing here? Like, you have a hard ass degree, some hard ass math, and you're here doing IT GRC stuff. It pays better. So
I was surprised when I found that out. So that's why a lot of people, that's what saturated the market. All those guys was coming over, which shout out to them though. But
I got another one here. Somebody said, I'm in high school and I want to get into, I'm in high school and I want to get into CS, either computer science or computer security. I'm not sure.
I think that's science, but go ahead.
Science. Okay. How would y'all recommend I break into cybersecurity? So I would say start right now, do projects, learn as much IT as you possibly can. If your school has a project where you can be a working student in your high school, computer security. Okay. If you can, right now, what you need to focus on is the basics, fundamentals of information technology, fundamentals of computers. If your school has projects, if they have clubs, where they're setting up networks, setting up computers, you want to get in on that. If they have a program, I know at my kids' school, they had a program where you could get an A+ certification. They'll pay for it, and they had like a program where you could actually get experience. You need to do stuff like that. Anything you can do to get your hands on computers, tearing them apart, putting them together, putting the networks together, all that kind of stuff. What would you say to that one, PBO?
That's 100%. I would look in your area. I think Boys and Girls Clubs, if they still exist, they had an IT program. There's a lot of programs in their area that people are still kind of pushing at. And I think you hit it right there. I would do some of the starter A+, networking plus from CompTIA. I think you can handle that as in high school. And shout out to Combo. He's a little more hands-on. I'm studying. I'm spinning up some AWS virtual stuff. So
yeah, that works too.
And you get a year free. I would recommend it. I rotate my my email address and keep getting a couple years free. Shout out to the high school guy. And that's where I learned. They got a lot of labs out there for you to start up with. And especially when it's free, you can just spin up. Just make sure you tear down your stuff just in case that. But that's kind of how I would start and recommend it.
AWS and Azure have free cloud, and I believe Google does too. They have a thing where you can log in. They'll give you free instances, so you're actually creating cloud instances, and you can make labs for yourself, and you can start there. You want hands-on experience. That's most important, more important than a certification, more important, arguably, than a degree. That hands-on experience is going to really launch your career. You definitely want to finish school. I would definitely do that because that's going to help you. Don't do something that's going to shoot yourself in the foot, like drop out, like my dumb ass did.
And I'm sure you doing the right thing is keep your credit clean and don't get in trouble, man, because you can't have a felony and get in security, man. Not saying you're doing anything wrong, but I got a lot of homies that got felonies that can't really do big IT stuff, man. They really drill down, especially in the Fed space. They doing a background check. They doing federal. So even it could be something as you get kicked out of a department. That shows up because they file on it. And that shows up. You got my case and you're in your city, that's going to show up under your Social Security number. So you want to make sure you stay squeaky clean.
cybersecurity, one of the difference between this and regular IT is that the background check is serious. It's pretty serious because a
Facts.
lot of times you're dealing with sensitive information.
Money.
They don't want to give the keys to a bank robber. Does that make sense? They don't want that's kind of the mentality is like we can't afford, we're giving you a lot of trust. So we can't afford to take a risk on somebody who's already has a background where they did shady stuff. So keep your nose clean. I'm not saying that you can't get a job with a record, but it's going to be way harder, especially in some places, going to be damn near impossible. So keep your nose clean.
You can't work in the federal space, man. I had problems because I paid my taxes a little late. they were hearing me up. So yeah. So you just gotta, once again, just keep yourself clean. And two is don't get discouraged. I came out in a recession. Don't get discouraged. The thing is, because I'm a curmudgeon, a pessimist, 30% of people about to drop out of IT and cybersecurity because they're gonna get discouraged and they're gonna take them out, man. Because two is in, and I should tell Convocourses you need to get something about this. These are PBO's opinions and not opinions of the Convo. We're not going to get that spicy. Is most people were treating cybersecurity like it was Bitcoin. This is not no get rich quick scheme. You're going to have to grind. You're going to have to get your feet in the ground. This is real, man. It takes time. There's no shortcuts. You're not going to get a 3-month certification and make 6 figures, especially now. It's not going to happen. So you need to get your feet into the ground, start grinding. This is real. I'm not gonna get too carried away with it, but this is real.
And that's a great point. Cybersecurity is a specialization within a special. GRC is a specialization within a specialization. Like I get a lot of people who are brand new trying to get into GRC because it's non-technical. So what I'll say to that is you do have to have an understanding of basic information technology. And while I do like Tech Woke, who's a younger dude who's out there doing his thing, Tech Woke started off with no solid information technology background. He's an exception to the rule. And I'm not saying you can't do it, like especially if you work in certain spaces. If you happen to be in the healthcare space, you might be able to get into HIPAA, right? Which is some GRC stuff. If you're in the financial space, you might be able to do Sarbanes-Oxley or something like that, which does touch into GRC stuff. So there's a way to get from here to there. But like PBO said, like there is a learning curve here. It's definitely not for everybody. So keep that in mind. All right, guys, I think that's about it. Thank you guys so much for your donations. Thank you, Farron. Thank you, Rookie, for that. I will get you your resume. I haven't forgotten about you. And thanks, big thanks. Shout out to my man, Larry, for all you guys' awesome donations. I appreciate it. That's it for this one. I have some stuff to do. Thank you, PBO. I appreciate you, man. As always, on point. I love it. We got to do this again sometime. I'm waiting for your course. PBO has a course coming out, everybody.
PBO been having it coming out for 3 months. He's got to tighten up a little bit. Dr. O's going to fire me. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you guys.